go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's CybHER conversation brought to you by Peraton. My name is Janessa Palmieri, and on behalf of Peraton, we are proud to partner with CybHER to bring you these weekly conversations. For those of you who are joining us for the first time today, CybHER is a program out of Dakota State University that works to motivate, empower, and educate young women in cybersecurity. Just a reminder, at any point during the program, you can ask a question via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. I'm very honored to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Nikki Robinson. Dr. Nikki Robinson is a security architect at IBM, as well as an adjunct professor at Capital Technology University. Her main areas of expertise include vulnerability management, risk management, human factors, engineering, and security architect and design. Nikki, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here and talk to you a little bit about how I got into cybersecurity. So I'll start from the beginning. So when I was in high school and I was, trying to decide what do I want to do, what school do I want to go to, what am I interested in? I really wasn't sure, but I did get accepted to George Mason University, which anyone who's familiar with sort of the East Coast, it's in Virginia. So I got accepted there, and I had at the time, like a really big interest in psychology. And I thought, well, I'm gonna be a psychologist. That sounds really interesting to me. So, sorry, yes? Sorry, 1 second. Sorry, that's my daughter. She made me a necklace, which was really sweet. So when I was at George Mason, I wanted to do psychology. I thought that that's kind of what I wanted to do. And sort of what I found was that the format of the university at the time, I was like, ooh, it wasn't quite right for me. So I decided to sort of start my career and do online school at the time. And so I was like, well, I'm going to figure this out while I have a career and sort of figure out what I want to do. So I actually started as an administrative clerk, an admin assistant for a company. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get my associate's degree in general studies, and while I sort of figure out what I want to do. So did that. And as I was getting I'm working as an administrative assistant, and I made a friend with someone who was on the help desk, an IT guy. And I told him I was sort of interested in computers. And so I was having a problem one day with my email. And I said, Garrett, I need help. Can you help me with my email? And he was like, no, you're smart. You can figure this out. You can do it. And so I did all the troubleshooting. I did all the research to figure out what the problem was. I found out it was a registry key that was it was misconfigured. So he gave me permissions and let me fix it. And I fixed it. And that was my first, I was so excited that I could fix this technical problem by myself. And so I decided to pursue a bachelor's in IT. And software engineering. So that's what I ended up doing my undergrad in. And that sort of led to my career in IT. And so I got a job on help desk. I actually joked that I followed Garrett around the company because every time he got a promotion, I just sort of took his job. So I was doing systems administration. And hi. Okay, go for it. Thanks. And so anyway, so I was a systems administrator, and then decided I want to go back to school and get my master's degree because I wanted to sort of get into leadership. So I got a master's in information and telecommunications systems management. But the interesting thing was I did a concentration in information assurance, which at the time was sort of like the precursor to what we know cybersecurity as today. So that was my first sort of foray into cybersecurity. So I was working in IT, and I started noticing some interesting things on the IT side about vulnerabilities and vulnerability management. So learning about, what kind of issues there are, security concerns there are from the IT operations side. So then I got really interested in vulnerabilities and decided to go get a doctorate of cyber at CapTech. So I sort of turned my IT career into a cybersecurity career by doing this research. Got my first job as a cybersecurity engineer, and then over the next couple of years, furthering my research and started doing more public speaking and getting engaged in the cyber community, and learning a lot about vulnerability management, incident response. And I think the coolest thing about cybersecurity that I've learned probably so far is that cybersecurity is this massive field. There are so many different ways that you can go in cybersecurity. And I sort of found my niche in vulnerability management and incident response. But one of the things that I learned while I was getting into a career in cybersecurity was that, there's this need to have technical people, non-technical people, people who understand policy and procedures, who understand psychology, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. But there are so many different skill sets that you need to have to be really successful in security. And so I found that sort of the blend of academic research, doing that with my doctorate, and then bringing that into some of the technical stuff that I do day to day really helped me to start solving problems, and really complex problems, which is what led me to being a security architect at IBM, which has been just an amazing, fun, exciting challenge. And I can't even describe how awesome it's been to work at IBM. So getting to understand, sort of security problems at this massive scale has really opened my eyes to just the wide variety of skill sets that we need in security. And so last year, I decided to go back and get a second PhD in human factors. And that's what brings me back to psychology, because what I found in cybersecurity is that it's great to be technical and to understand, red teamers, the guys that are hacking and getting into computers, the network defenders, the people that are protecting the networks, the network engineers. But we also need people who understand people. So understanding users, understanding people that are using the technology that we're giving them. So I went back and did a study in human factors. So I did a focus group and I introduced some new terminology. I will say it here, it's a vulnerability chaining blindness. Big concept, but ultimately it's difficult for security practitioners and IT people to look at vulnerabilities in combination. We typically look at them one at a time, when we're going through and looking at a report or an assessment. So I was coming up with this concept to sort of define that problem that I saw in security. And along the way, met a lot of other human factors researchers that are working in cybersecurity. There are a lot of cognitive psychologists that are starting to move into cybersecurity and doing really exciting and interesting research around cognitive limitations. How much information can we really, how much can we really digest? If I'm reading a 600-page document, can I really understand 600 pages worth of document? I can't. So it's interesting to see these challenges from a different perspective. So cybersecurity really, especially over the last couple of years, seeing this sort of need for lots of different skill sets. I've had the opportunity to work with really great cyber engineers, architects, developers, who have such varied backgrounds. So you could have a background in finance and accounting and move into cybersecurity. You could have a background in or an interest in psychology or sociology. I know a really great researcher. She did anthropology and cybersecurity. So there's this huge this huge field, and you can really blend your other interests into cybersecurity. I have my family comes from a law enforcement background, and so I've always had this interest in law enforcement. And I actually use that background to pull into my cybersecurity research. So there's all kinds of different interests and ideas that you can bring to the table. That cybersecurity is this great community where it's like, yep, come on, show me your ideas. Let's get together and figure this out. And it was one of the things that really drew me to cybersecurity. And so 14 years into my career, starting as an admin assistant, and now I'm here as a security architect. And not just that, but I also am a professor now. So I stayed with CapTech teaching. I teach quantitative methods. So if you'd love to have another conversation on statistics in cybersecurity, I'm joking, I wouldn't do that. But there's, so I'm teaching some quantitative methods and some other courses. And then I also co-host the Resilient Cyber podcast with Chris Hughes, where we get to talk to all kinds of amazing industry experts about the different areas within cybersecurity and how to build resiliency into our systems. I'm also recently an ICIT fellow, so continuing my research with ICIT, the Institute for Critical Infrastructure and Technology, as well as I'm also the president of the board of directors for InfraGard Maryland. We partner with FBI to provide information sharing between the FBI and the public. So that's been a great organization to sort of bring public-private partnerships, organizations together. So here I was starting as an admin assistant with an associate's degree in general studies. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and found my way into cybersecurity. And it's been an amazing career so far. And I feel like in some ways I'm just getting started. One of the other, I think probably like biggest lessons that I've sort of learned is that careers are not linear. They don't move one direction. Typically they move up and down and all around, and you sort of find your way into doing things. If you'd asked me 5 years ago if I would have 2 PhDs and be a security architect at IBM, I'd be like, no way, there's no way. So the really cool thing is that you can sort of bring your interests in and try different things within security. Even starting my career in security like 3 years ago, I started as a security engineer, really focused on incident response, investigations, some digital forensics, and now working on human factors and behavioral analysis techniques and different types of ways of looking at cyber problems. So even in my cybersecurity career, it's had lots of different avenues within it. So it's an exciting field. There's certainly a lot to do in it. And I know that I am definitely happy to be here. It's been such a cool experience. And we were talking before, cybersecurity is still sort of this small world. You run into a lot of people. So it's kind of cool to get to see different people at different conferences and things like that. But I think some of the biggest, most exciting things getting into cybersecurity have been just sort of this ability to take my interest and love of mathematics and engineering and psychology and get to use them together and sort of come full circle with psychology. So that was sort of my journey getting into cybersecurity. I guess happy to take any questions if you have any.
All right, thank you again for attending Cyber Conversations. You have a very inspiring story and an immense impact. Now we'll go to the Q&A sections. I would like to remind the audience to put the questions you have in the Q&A box. While waiting for questions from the audience, I have some questions of my own. My first question is, what does your typical day at work look like as a security architect?
That is a great question. So I would say every day is a little bit different. But the team that I work on, we sort of have 2 big tasks, 2 big buckets. We do innovation and remediation. So on the innovation side, that might be sort of coming up with the new ideas, new tooling, how can we sort of solve some of these security problems? And then from the remediation side, trying to either fix vulnerabilities or looking at, again, more vulnerabilities and trying to figure out maybe what happened and how I'm trying to fix those things. So every day is a little bit different. Some days I'm more focused on remediation. Some days I'm working on writing and researching. But I think it's another really important point about cybersecurity is that every day is different. And for me, that's the most exciting thing is I can just try something new every day.
Awesome. The second questions I have is, what is a risk you took in your career that paid off?
Yes, that's a great question. I would say going for the DSC in cybersecurity, and I'll tell you why. So when I decided to go for the doctorate, I was still in IT operations, and in the operations world, your main job is to keep your systems running, keep the customer systems going and all that. And so when I said that I wanted to go for a DSC, I had a lot of people that were like, you don't need a doctorate in IT, you don't need to do this. Why are you doing this? And I was also really interested in low and medium vulnerabilities, like vulnerabilities that are scored a lot lower. Most vulnerabilities, like the big ones like SolarWinds and Log4j, those are like critical, vulnerabilities and 0 days. And that's what everybody's focused on. And I was interested in the lower and medium vulnerabilities. And people kept telling me, nobody cares about those. Nobody's interested in those. Why are you researching that? And so I took a really big risk to spend the money and spend the time to get a doctorate. And it absolutely paid off. Yeah, that one worked out. Oh, I think you might
Awesome.
be.
Oh yeah, there you go. Could you tell us more about human factors? Have you done any phishing or any social engineering?
Yeah, so human factors, traditionally, it's a very sort of old field of study. Human factors, and it was human factors and ergonomics, is sort of this field of study. It blends psychology, engineering, with the main focus of how do we create and develop tools for humans that will work the best for them. And so I always take this example of like a hammer. How do you build a hammer that you can hold, that is safe for you to use, is ergonomic and fits in your hand, and that does what it's supposed to do? And so applying those methods to computers. So how do we design systems that make sense for users? How do we help them be efficient and be more efficient? So that's really sort of the bread and butter of human factors. There's also a lot of cognitive psychology that's coming into that field now, but understanding how humans use their tools. Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges in security right now are sort of phishing attacks, right? It's like, how do you train people to understand what phishing attacks can mean to an organization? So yes, so I think helping to to teach people in a meaningful way, and not just teaching them, once a year or once a quarter or something like that, but genuinely helping to change behavior. And so that's like the biggest piece, I think, of the adding human factors into security.
Awesome. We have a question from the audience. The question is, what are the challenges you face changing your major?
Oh yeah, so I actually had a lot of support doing that. I will say that part of it was sort of easy. But I also, sort of switched tracks. And so I just decided to do the associates in general studies first, and sort of do that because I still wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So once I did that, then I could focus on, okay, this is the specialty I want for my bachelor's degree. But yeah, leaving George Mason was challenging. I think because, especially at the time, it's so much more acceptable now, especially with COVID. But at the time, 14 years ago, when I wanted to go to strictly online school, there was a lot of like, well, it's online school. Is that, are you really going to be learning? And, there was some concern there, but I had a great experience with online school, even at the time. But yeah, so that was more the biggest challenge, was sort of transitioning to online school, as far as that goes. Yeah.
Great. Can you talk more about what incident response means?
Definitely. So incident response, as an incident responder, I would come in when something has happened. So if malware was downloaded to a machine, if a machine was connected to a malicious actor's machine and they were exfiltrating data, if they were taking data from the machine, something like that, some such scenario like that, then I would come in and perform a series of steps to help contain the machine. So to stop it from doing whatever connection it had to a malicious, a separate malicious machine, or I would come in and determine what scale of incident it was. So was this, a phishing attack that didn't really get very far, or did they drop malware or ransomware or something like that, and we need to contain? And so it's sort of that entire process of, do we contain? What information do we collect? How far did they get? So really understanding the entirety, the scale and scope of the incident.
Great. If you could turn back time and it could be 20 now, is there anything you would have done differently?
I would say no, because I think every single part of that journey taught me something so different. And that probably sounds really cliche, but it really is true. Because every time I wasn't sure about a decision, or I wasn't sure if I was going the right direction, I learned something either about myself and what I wanted to do with my career, and where I wanted to go. But I also think a lot of that gave me strength, because very specifically when I wanted to get the DSC and I had so much pushback getting the doctorate, I really had to sort of fight for, this is important, this is why this is important, and telling people why I felt like it was important. So I really had to stand up for myself. And so I think every piece of that was sort of building up to this moment.
That's awesome. What is the coolest project you've worked on?
Ooh, this is a good one. Do you want academic, or do you want like practitioner, professional? Both.
Anything you want.
Okay.
Yeah, both could be one.
Okay, I'll do both. Okay, so I'll start academic. I will say the PhD research that I just did, I think I'm just getting started on that. So I've been studying, this vulnerability chaining blindness, and how do we remediate vulnerabilities effectively, and how do we view them in combination, which has taken me down this rabbit hole of understanding perception. How do we perceive things? As well as language. What is the type of language that we're using to speak to each other about cybersecurity? Is it effective? That has been the coolest project, because now I just have so many more books. They're everywhere. So I'm studying so many new things. So that's been really cool. As far as, okay, so the other thing, this was back in my help desk days, but one of the coolest projects I actually got to do, I built a network from the ground up. I was literally given server racks and servers and network devices, and I had no idea what I was doing. I can say that now. I had no idea what I was doing. No, I had some experience, but building a network from the ground up, there are very few experiences that you get to do that in the IT field, because for the most part, when you come into an environment, you are dealing with some systems that have been there for a while. You're not building anything. And getting to build a network from the ground up was the coolest thing I've ever done, because I learned so much about networking, because I had to. I didn't have a choice. So I got to learn so much about the entire tech stack. So up and down, all through layers 1 through 8 of the OSI model. If you guys don't know what that is, I highly recommend you look at it after. But yeah, getting to learn everything from the data layer all the way up to the application layer. So yes, so that's probably one of the coolest things I've gotten to do.
Great. What is one valuable lesson you've learned throughout your life?
Again, this might sound a little cliche, but trust your gut. Really to trust my gut, because again, and it wasn't just with the DSC, it can be challenging being a woman in a technical field to sort of prove, hey, I have the technical chops to be here. So I would say that, just sort of standing up for myself and showing people what I can do. I think that's the biggest lesson, is just sort of like, just keep going, because especially if you believe in yourself and your talent and what you can do, people will start to see it. So I think that's definitely the biggest one.
Is there someone you look up to in the field?
Oh, I have several. Yes. So we were talking earlier about Renee. She was the CIO at NASA. She is amazing. She's a great communicator. She's technical. She really understands people. So I definitely look up to her. Oh my gosh, there are so many. I have to mention Dr. Philip Culp. I very, very much look up to him. He was actually the first person to give me a chance in cybersecurity. So he gave me my first role in cybersecurity. And I very much look up to him because he's a great advocate of getting people into security, but he's also incredibly technical and very supportive. I would also say, oh my gosh, there's so many. So just to give a couple of names, Dr. Margaret Cunningham, she was a cognitive psychologist and moved into security. She has some really phenomenal research out there on human factors and security, and things like eye tracking and movement, like how do you follow someone's eyes on the computer screen and what they're doing and paying attention. So yeah, so I would say those are the three. I have so many, but those are three of the big ones I look up to.
Awesome. What's your favorite hacker movie?
Oh, well, Hackers. I mean, I think I know that's right. But I love it because I just think it's just a great movie. But there's also, I feel like the other one, and especially for my generation, like Swordfish is another really great one. So yeah, so there's from my generation, from my younger days. But yeah, those are the two I really enjoy.
Is your current job your dream job?
100,000%. Yes, I cannot, and that's why I was saying at the beginning, I can't put into words how much it means to get the opportunity to work at IBM, and just doing what I'm doing. I feel very, very fortunate to get to do what I get to do. And yeah, again, I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like there's so much opportunity there, and to have the support, the great leadership, I don't know, everything there is just amazing. So yes, absolutely, dream job. Couldn't ask for any more.
Terrific. As part of the closing question, what advice would you give to all the young people watching this session?
Yes, I would say, one, take a deep breath. If you're considering schools and things like that, it's all going to work out. It will all work out. Whatever school you end up at, whatever program you decide to go with, you have wiggle room and you have time to change your mind, and that's okay. That's one piece of advice, that you don't have to feel stuck doing one thing. If you decide to change your mind, that's okay. I changed my mind too. It's okay. I didn't mention this, but my undergrad was in software engineering as well, because I thought I might be a developer. And I decided that was not for me. So you can always change your mind and try something different, but the skills that you learn, you can take with you into your other careers. The other piece of advice that I would give is that, especially around STEM fields, and not just cybersecurity, but IT, software development, database administration, like there's such a number of wide fields within STEM, science, mathematics. There's so many different things that you can do that are available to you. And I would highly encourage anyone, I'm happy to provide my information. If anyone has any questions about career fields in cybersecurity or anything like that, and I would highly recommend reaching out to someone who's an expert in the field and ask them questions, especially in the cybersecurity community. I found everybody is so welcoming and open to having these types of conversations and encouraging. So yeah, reach out to a mentor, reach out to someone who can sort of walk you through the process and help you decide what you would like to do, because cybersecurity is a huge field. There's so much that you can do. So yeah, so I would say keep an open mind, and don't be afraid to fail. Do not be afraid to fail. That happens. I fail all the time. It's okay. But yeah, so just, yeah, be open-minded. Don't be afraid to fail, and reach out when you need help, because there's lots of cyber people out there that would be happy to help.
Thank you, Nikki. That's such great advice. I love how you talked about how cybersecurity is really relevant to anybody and everybody. If you're in psychology and finance and STEM in general, you can all bring it in and turn it back to cybersecurity. And that's what's so unique about our field. And yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to close it with a quick poll. So I'm going to go ahead and share that on the screen for our guests today, or excuse me, our viewers. And so follow us on Facebook. We have Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, where this conversation will be uploaded later, I believe in 1 to 2 weeks. So it'll be uploaded on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/CybHER. And check out our website at cyber.org for more information on our programs and upcoming conversations. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being here today. And we really are so grateful for your inspiring story. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep. Have a great night, everybody.